The galaxy had long forgotten Earth, the once proud cradle of humanity. Thousands of years ago, the Galactic Council had declared the human race extinct after the devastating war that wiped them out. It had been a simple decision. Earth's inhabitants, with their primitive technology and reckless ambition, had been a threat to the harmony of the galaxy. The Council's decision was final. Humanity was erased from the stars, and Earth itself was abandoned, lost to time. Or so they thought. Out in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, beyond the bright lights of the major star systems, an ancient relic lay hidden, a planet that was once home to a thriving civilization, now forgotten by all. Earth. Beneath its barren surface, buried deep in the depths of the oceans and dust, something was stirring. The Earth was far from empty. Humanity had been waiting, hiding, and now it was ready to rise again. A signal, faint and weak, began to echo across the cosmos. It started as a simple, coded message, a signal no one had expected, not even the Council. The message didn't even carry a name. It was just numbers and frequencies, an unknown origin. At first, the galactic systems ignored it, a forgotten relic of an extinct species. No one had cared to check. But then, it came again, stronger and clearer. On the outskirts of the galaxy, far from the prying eyes of the Council, a group of explorers detected the signal. They were part of a research team that specialized in finding forgotten artifacts of the past. Treasures hidden in ancient, long-forgotten places. Their ship, the Starlight Voyager, was in orbit around a nearby star when they first caught the signal. At first, they thought it was nothing more than static or interference, just another faint trace of a dead civilization. But curiosity got the best of them. "Captain, the signal's getting stronger," said the technician on the ship's bridge, his voice tense as he stared at the readings. "This isn't normal. This is deliberate." The captain, a woman named Mara, walked up to the technician's console and studied the screen. A simple data string, followed by a series of pulsating patterns. This wasn't some random transmission. It was structured, almost intelligent. "Any idea where it's coming from?" she asked, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "It's originating from somewhere near the galactic core," the technician replied. "But that's impossible. There's nothing but empty space there. The place is dead." Mara rubbed her chin thoughtfully. There were no records of life or civilization in that area of space. It was a place even the most advanced alien species in the galaxy avoided. A place considered inhospitable. Yet, here it was. Someone, or something, was broadcasting this signal, this message. Her instincts screamed that they had found something important. After all, space was vast. But this signal, this couldn't be a coincidence. The humans had vanished without a trace, their homeworld erased from existence. Yet here they were, still alive, sending a message that could change everything. "Get us there," Mara ordered. "We're going to investigate. If this is what I think it is, the galaxy won't know what hit it." The Starlight Voyager accelerated toward the source of the signal. As they drew closer to the origin, the ship's sensors began to pick up more anomalies. Faint energy readings, strange magnetic fields, and odd gravitational shifts. It was clear something immense had been hiding here, something the galaxy hadn't expected to exist. Within hours, the ship arrived in orbit around a forgotten world, a world that hadn't been charted in millennia. As the crew looked down upon the planet's surface, the view through the ship's viewport was unsettling. The planet was covered in what appeared to be vast, swirling storms with an atmosphere that seemed far too thick to support life. The surface was rugged and desolate, marked by craters and the remnants of long-forgotten cities. "This is it," Mara whispered under her breath, a mix of awe and disbelief in her voice. She turned to her crew, eyes wide with the weight of what they were about to uncover. "We found Earth." The ship descended slowly, piercing the thick cloud cover that enveloped the planet. For centuries, Earth had been left untouched, a forgotten relic. But now something was stirring beneath the surface. Humanity had survived. hidden from the prying eyes of the Council, and they had been waiting for this moment. The return of the signal, the return of the ship, the return of humanity. Mara's heart raced as she gazed out at the planet below. What would they find? What had become of humanity after all these years? Had they evolved beyond recognition? Or were they still the same people who had once ruled the stars? The ship touched down on the rocky surface of the planet, the crew preparing for what was sure to be a life-changing discovery. As the doors of the Starlight Voyager opened, the explorers stepped out onto Earth's soil, feeling the weight of the past on their shoulders. The ground beneath their feet was unfamiliar, but it also felt like home. This was Earth. But it wasn't the Earth they had read about in history books. It was something new, something reborn. And it was waiting for them. The explorers ventured deeper into the planet's surface, and as they traveled, they began to uncover strange, advanced technology buried under layers of dust and decay. Massive metal structures, still intact after centuries of neglect. Ancient machinery that hummed with life as though it had never been dormant. It was as if humanity had been preparing for something, waiting for the right moment to strike. Mara's pulse quickened. She had to know. The truth was just within reach. What had happened to humanity? What had they become after being abandoned by the galaxy? And most importantly, why had they waited so long to send a message? The answer was close, hidden within the shadows of Earth's forgotten past. As the crew stepped off the Starlight Voyager and onto the rugged surface of Earth, they felt a weight in the air. It was as if the very planet was holding its breath, waiting. The planet had been untouched for centuries, and now it was awakening. The explorers' boots crunched over the dry, cracked earth, but the silence around them was suffocating, broken only by the hum of their equipment and the sound of their breathing. Captain Mara stood still for a moment, taking it all in. This was the planet of humanity's origins, the world that the Galactic Council had erased from existence. Yet, as far as anyone could tell, humanity hadn't just survived. They had thrived in the shadows of the galaxy, building, evolving, waiting for the right moment to strike. Captain, one of the crew members, Zane, called out from behind her. "You need to see this." Mara turned around and followed Zane to a small ridge that overlooked a vast, desolate valley. The view was breathtaking. The landscape was marred by craters, abandoned cities, and collapsed structures, remnants of a once great civilization. Yet in the distance, there was something else, something large, something out of place. "Is that a city?" Mara asked, squinting into the distance. Zane nodded. "It's unlike anything I've seen before, and it's still operational." Mara's heart raced. This was it, the proof that humanity had survived, that they had built something far beyond the primitive civilization the Council had destroyed. The faint signal had led them to this place, and now they were about to uncover something that would change everything. Without a word, Mara gestured for the team to follow. They moved quickly, making their way toward the distant structure. The closer they got, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary city. The architecture was advanced, sleek, metallic, and surprisingly clean. The buildings seemed to rise up from the earth, twisting and turning in ways that defied traditional design. It was a stark contrast to the ruins surrounding them. As they reached the edge of the city, a strange energy pulsed in the air, a faint vibration underfoot. The city seemed alive, as if it had been waiting for them all this time. Mara's curiosity was almost unbearable as she approached the gates of the city. They were massive, constructed from a material that shimmered with a soft glow. The gates stood ajar, inviting them in, but something in the back of Mara's mind warned her to be cautious. After all, they weren't the only ones who had come looking for Earth. The Galactic Council might have erased humanity, but they hadn't erased the knowledge of their existence. If this city was still operational, there could be others watching. "Captain, what if this place is more than just a city?" Zane asked, his voice low. "What if it's some kind of weapon or trap?" Mara considered this for a moment, her eyes scanning the surroundings. She didn't believe it was a trap, but she wasn't willing to take any chances. Earth had been left behind by the galaxy, forgotten, and now it was ready to rise again. But how? "Stay alert," Mara ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." The team moved inside, the doors of the city closing silently behind them. It was eerily quiet, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the enormous metallic halls. The city seemed abandoned, yet it was too well preserved to be a ruin. They passed by glowing panels that lit their way, but no sign of life was visible. They reached the heart of the city, a large central chamber with a high ceiling, adorned with strange symbols and carvings. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop the pedestal was a small device, humming with an energy that seemed both ancient and new. Mara stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. She knew, somehow, that this was the key to everything. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what they left behind." Zane and the rest of the crew gathered around, eyes wide. The device on the pedestal was no ordinary relic. It had a power unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't just advanced technology. It was a message, a warning, a symbol of humanity's survival. But what did it mean? What was Earth hiding? And why had the signal only just now been sent? Were they simply finding remnants of a forgotten past, or had humanity been waiting for this very moment, poised to rise again? Before Mara could answer her own questions, a low rumble filled the chamber. The ground beneath them shook, and the device on the pedestal began to glow with a blinding light. The air hummed with energy, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to warp and bend. "What's happening?" Zane shouted, trying to steady himself. The light intensified, and a deep, resonating voice filled the chamber, echoing in their minds. "You have come, just in time." The words sent a chill down Mara's spine. This wasn't just a message from the past. It was a call to action, a signal to the galaxy that Earth had not forgotten, and neither had humanity. In that moment, Mara realized that Earth's return would change everything. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, and humanity, after 3,000 years, was ready to make its presence known once again. The voice that resonated within the chamber lingered in the air, echoing deep in the minds of Captain Mara and her crew. Its words were brief, but they carried the weight of centuries. "You have come, just in time." Mara's heart raced. She glanced around at her crew, their faces pale and confused. None of them had expected this. None of them had known what to expect when they set foot on Earth. "What was that?" Zane muttered, his eyes darting around the darkened chamber. "I don't know," Mara replied, her voice steady despite the chaos brewing inside her. She stepped forward, her boots echoing against the stone floor, as she approached the pedestal once more. The light emanating from the device grew brighter with each passing second, and the air around her seemed to hum with an energy that was both foreign and familiar. For a moment, the crew stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. They had come for a mission, but this was beyond anything they had anticipated. This wasn't just a discovery. This was something far more significant, something that could change the course of the galaxy. Mara reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it over the device. At first, nothing happened. But then, the surface of the pedestal seemed to ripple, as if the very fabric of reality was bending under her touch. The glow intensified, casting long shadows across the room. A sudden, sharp voice cut through the air. "Who dares disturb the slumber of Earth?" The words were sharp and commanding, spoken in a language that none of them understood. But the meaning was clear. The voice was ancient, filled with authority and power. It was no longer just a message. It was a challenge. "I am Captain Mara," she said, her voice firm as she spoke to the unseen presence. "We come from the Galactic Federation. We seek the truth of Earth's disappearance." And we. The voice interrupted her with a low, rumbling laugh. "Truth, truth. You seek the truth of a world that was erased, a world that was left to rot while the stars above burned with pride. You have no right to seek what was never meant for you. Mara stood still, her hand still resting on the device. A cold sweat clung to her forehead. The voice seemed to know more than it let on, and its words were filled with contempt. But it also held something else, something she couldn't yet comprehend. Fear. She stepped back slowly, signaling for her crew to retreat. As they moved away, the device pulsed once again, and the room was flooded with a new sound, an unfamiliar hum, like the beginning of an engine coming to life. The walls trembled beneath their feet, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire city was awakening, shifting in response to the energy that had been unleashed. The distant lights of the city flickered and blinked, as if in answer to the voice that had spoken to them. "We need to leave. Now," Mara ordered, her voice low but urgent. She had no idea what this device was capable of, or what this entity was, but something told her that if they didn't get out of there soon, the consequences could be disastrous. The crew quickly made their way toward the exit, but as they reached the gates of the city, the rumbling sound grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. It wasn't an earthquake, not like anything they had experienced before. It was something else. A warning. Behind them, the chamber doors slammed shut with a resounding thud, trapping them inside. "We're not getting out that way," Zane said, his face pale. "What do we do now?" Mara didn't have an answer. The situation had escalated too quickly. This wasn't just a mystery. It was a warning, a signal that Earth wasn't a forgotten planet. It was a place of immense power, a power that had been dormant for far too long. A sudden flash of light from the sky outside caught their attention. The crew turned, and their eyes widened in disbelief. The sky was changing. The stars themselves seemed to shift, and the atmosphere around them seemed to distort. The once dark sky was now filled with strange, swirling patterns of light, like a massive energy storm rolling in from the depths of space. The air grew thick with static, and a low, powerful hum vibrated through their bones. Mara could feel the tension building. Something was coming. Something big. And whatever it was tied to Earth's ancient past. "We need to find shelter," she said, trying to steady her voice. "We can't let this storm catch us." But as they scrambled to find a way out of the city, a deep mechanical voice reverberated from the sky above. It wasn't the same voice they had heard in the chamber, but it was unmistakably related. "Humanity." The voice boomed, its tone cold and unfeeling. "You have been silent for long enough. Now, you will pay for your defiance." The words hung in the air, like a death sentence. They were not just a warning. They were a promise. The voice of Earth, of whatever ancient power had once ruled this planet, was awake. And it wasn't pleased. Mara's heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't the Earth she remembered from her studies. This wasn't the planet that had been erased from history. This was something far darker, more dangerous. And humanity, her crew, was right in the middle of it. As the storm grew closer, a terrifying thought crossed her mind. Was this Earth's vengeance? The sky above the city swirled with unnatural energy. It was as if the very atmosphere had been torn apart, the stars blinking out of existence one by one, replaced by a deep, suffocating darkness. The storm that had once seemed distant was now upon them. The crew of the Vanguard scrambled through the streets, seeking shelter, their breath shallow and frantic. Mara's heart raced as she looked up at the ominous black clouds that now rolled across the heavens. There was no sign of the familiar blue sky. No more sunlight or stars, just an overwhelming sense of impending doom. "Captain," Zane's voice cut through the chaos. "This way. I found a building." Mara turned quickly and followed him through the narrow streets, the crew close behind. The ground beneath their feet vibrated as if the planet itself was trembling. There was a low hum in the air, like a constant, vibrating pulse coming from deep within the planet. It was as if something was coming awake, something ancient and powerful. "Where are we going?" Mara called out, her voice strained. Zane didn't answer immediately. He led them into a large, crumbling structure, its walls covered in vines and the signs of neglect. The air inside was thick with dust, but it was better than being out in the open. They huddled in the dark, waiting, hearts pounding in their chests. "We've got to figure out what's going on," Mara said, her voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at her insides. "Why is Earth doing this? Why now?" "We don't know enough," Zane replied, his face grim. "That device we saw, it wasn't just a relic. It was something far more dangerous. It's like the planet itself is alive, and we just woke it up." Mara nodded, feeling the weight of his words. They had uncovered something beyond their understanding, and now they had to face the consequences. She felt a deep sense of dread creeping into her thoughts, but she pushed it aside. She had to keep her crew alive. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook again, harder this time. It was not an earthquake. The force was too controlled, too deliberate. The entire building seemed to groan under the strain. "Get to cover," Mara shouted, but it was too late. The walls of the building cracked, and a massive explosion of light erupted outside, shaking the ground so violently that it knocked the crew off their feet. Mara scrambled to her feet, her vision blurred from the impact. A loud, rumbling sound filled the air, accompanied by a low metallic groan. The building's outer walls had collapsed, and the street outside had split open, revealing a massive structure beneath the earth. It was a machine, a colossal, ancient structure that had been hidden for millennia, waiting for something, waiting for them. Through the chaos, Mara's gaze was drawn to the enormous machine. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a vast, geometric structure that seemed to stretch far into the depths of the planet. It hummed with power, the energy it emitted pulsating in waves. "This isn't just a storm," Zane muttered, his voice hoarse. "It's a signal, a calling. Earth is waking up." Mara's heart skipped a beat. Earth, the planet they thought was dead and buried, was alive. It was not just a relic of the past. It was a living, breathing entity, one that was ready to fight. The voice that had spoken to them before echoed through the ruins, its tone cold and commanding. "Humanity has returned, but you will find nothing but ruin in your wake. You will not be allowed to trespass upon the throne of Earth." Mara clenched her fists. "This is no throne. Earth was never meant to rule the galaxy. We're here to stop it from controlling everything." As the massive machine began to hum louder, a series of beams shot up from its core, breaking through the sky above. The light illuminated the once-forgotten city, casting eerie shadows on the ruins. It was as if the planet itself was sending a message across the universe. The air crackled with power. Mara could feel the atmosphere change, growing thick with static. The machine seemed to pulse with life, and the ground around them began to crack open. It was no longer just a storm. It was an invasion, a declaration of war from Earth itself. "What do we do now, Captain?" Zane's voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of despair. Mara looked around at her crew. They were all scared, every one of them, but they were also determined. She could see it in their eyes. They weren't going to let Earth's wrath take them down. Not without a fight. "We fight back," Mara said, her voice steady. "This is our planet too, and we're not going to let it fall under anyone's control again." A loud booming voice rumbled from the machine, shaking the very air around them. "Humanity has always been a plague on the galaxy. It is time to eradicate your kind." The words were clear, the meaning unmistakable. Earth was not only alive, it was angry, and it wanted revenge for the sins committed against it. But Mara wasn't about to give up. Not when the stakes were this high. "We'll show them what humanity is capable of," she muttered under her breath, gathering her crew around her. As the machine's energy increased, so did the urgency of the situation. Earth was about to unleash something catastrophic, and humanity's only chance to survive was to stop it before it was too late. Mara knew they had to act fast, or Earth's wrath would destroy everything they held dear. Mara's mind raced as she observed the colossal machine towering before them. Its immense presence seemed to drain the very light from the sky. Whatever Earth had awakened beneath the surface, it was far beyond anything they had imagined. The hum of the machine vibrated through the ground, sending tremors up their spines. "We have to find a way to stop this," Mara said, her voice sharp, trying to shake off the growing sense of helplessness that threatened to overtake her. Zane was pacing in front of the ruins, his hands clenched into fists. "But we don't even know what we're dealing with. The technology. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Mara nodded. He was right. The machine was old, ancient, even, and far more advanced than anything they had encountered. It didn't just possess raw power. It had an eerie precision, like it was purpose-built to obliterate anything in its path. "It's not just a weapon," Mara murmured, her brow furrowing as the pieces began to fall into place. "It's a living weapon." A wave of disbelief hit the crew. Could Earth have been preparing something like this for centuries? And why hadn't they known? How had they all missed the signs? "What do you mean by living weapon, Captain?" asked Kendra, her voice hesitant but full of concern. Mara glanced back at the machine. It was difficult to explain, but she could feel it. The energy emanating from the core of the structure wasn't just electrical. It felt like something biological, as though the machine itself was breathing, pulsing with life. "I don't know how to explain it, but there's something more to this machine than just metal and wires," Mara said. "The planet. It's connected to it in ways we can't understand. It's like Earth has created something that thinks, something that moves and adapts on its own. If it's alive, that means it can change, evolve." The ground beneath them trembled again, this time more violently. A low rumble echoed from the machine as beams of intense light shot from its core and blasted into the sky. The clouds began to swirl faster, forming a dark vortex above them. "We don't have time to figure it out the slow way," Mara declared, her eyes narrowing. "We need to strike fast, before Earth fully awakens." But just as the crew was preparing to move, a voice echoed out, this time louder, clearer. It wasn't coming from any of their comm systems. It was something far more primal, coming from deep within the heart of the machine. "You dare defy me." The voice was cold and unfeeling. It was as though the machine spoke for the entire planet. "You, who destroyed my children, who desecrated my sanctuary. Now, you will suffer the consequences." The words hung heavy in the air, each syllable seeming to make the ground shake beneath their feet. Mara's heart sank as she realized the truth. This wasn't just an attack. It was Earth's vengeance. The planet itself was punishing them for their actions, for their mistakes. But Earth had forgotten one crucial thing. Humanity wasn't the same as before. They had grown stronger, more resilient. They wouldn't be so easily beaten. "We're not just going to stand here and let Earth erase us," Mara said, her voice filled with a new resolve. "We've fought back against enemies more dangerous than this. We can do it again." She looked at her crew, each face filled with determination. They had seen their share of battles, fought wars, and faced enemies across the galaxy. But this was different. This wasn't just another fight for survival. This was a battle for humanity's very existence. Zane stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "We need to know more about that machine," he said, his voice steady. "What's its weakness? Where's the heart of it? If we can find that, maybe we can shut it down." Mara considered his words for a moment. If they could get to the core of the machine, they might be able to stop it. But that was easier said than done. The machine's power was only increasing, and every moment they wasted would bring them closer to Earth's wrath. "There's only one way to find out," Mara said, determination growing in her chest. "We're going in." She signaled to her crew, and they began to move quickly toward the machine, carefully navigating the unstable ground. The air felt charged, the energy from the machine making it difficult to think straight. It was as if Earth itself was pushing back against them, trying to keep them away. But Mara didn't care. She wouldn't let Earth's ancient vengeance destroy them. "Stay close," she said, her voice firm, "and be ready for anything." They reached the edge of the massive structure, where the ground had cracked open to reveal a massive shaft leading deep into the planet. It was dark, but the pulse of energy from the machine illuminated the path. It was almost as if it were guiding them. The crew hesitated for a moment, uncertainty hanging in the air, but Mara was already moving forward, and they followed. As they descended into the depths of the planet, the air grew thick with tension. The walls of the shaft were lined with strange symbols and markings, none of which they could decipher. It was clear that they were about to uncover something far beyond their understanding. "We have to stop it," Mara muttered to herself, her grip tightening on her weapon. The machine's presence was overwhelming, and every step they took seemed to make it stronger. The planet was alive, and it was watching them. Suddenly, the rumbling of the machine grew louder, and a blinding light shot out from the shaft. The crew was thrown back, their ears ringing with the deafening sound. For a moment, Mara thought it was the end, but then everything went silent. They looked up, and the walls of the shaft had opened, revealing what looked like a control room. In the center of the room stood an enormous interface, a living, breathing system of pulsating energy. And at the heart of it all was Earth itself. Mara took a deep breath. This was it, the final step, the place where humanity would either survive or be erased forever. The crew stood in the heart of the machine, breathless and dazed. The control room before them was like nothing they had ever encountered. It felt alive, pulse after pulse, the hum of energy filling the air, vibrating the very walls. The room's vast, organic-like structure seemed to grow and shift before their eyes. It was as though Earth itself was watching them, waiting for them to make their next move. Mara scanned the room. In the center was a glowing core, a massive pulsating sphere of light and energy, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, a vision of power beyond comprehension. She could feel its pull, almost as if the planet itself was calling to her. "We have to shut it down," Mara said, her voice a low growl, her focus fixed on the glowing core. "But I don't know how." Zane stepped forward, examining the walls. Strange symbols, almost alien in design, were carved into the surfaces. They seemed to move, shifting with each step the crew took. "It's like it's reacting to us," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Kendra pulled out her scanner, trying to get a reading on the energy levels. "The core is emitting a massive amount of power. We don't even know what kind of force we're dealing with here. One wrong move, and it could destroy everything." They couldn't afford to make a mistake. The stakes were higher than ever. If they didn't stop the machine now, humanity could be wiped out, erased by Earth's own vengeance. But they didn't know how to turn it off. The symbols on the walls, the organic structure of the room, it was all part of Earth's design. Earth had created something to protect itself, and now the planet was fighting back. As they stood in the center of the control room, a sharp voice rang out, reverberating through the walls. "You've come far, but it's too late now." The voice was cold, disembodied, and seemingly omnipresent. It filled the room, echoing in their minds. It was the machine. It was Earth itself. Mara's blood ran cold. The voice felt like it was inside her head, mocking her. "You think you can stop me? You who have forsaken me, abandoned me to rot in the void. You cannot defy your Creator." The voice continued, growing louder, more menacing. "You are nothing compared to the power I possess." "We'll see about that," Mara muttered under her breath, trying to stay focused. The crew needed a plan, and they needed one fast. She glanced at Zane, then Kendra. They couldn't give up now. They had come too far. Kendra's face was grim as she spoke. "It's not just a machine. It's a living, breathing force. We need to destroy it at its source. We need to get to the core." Mara nodded. "But how? We don't have the firepower to take it down." Zane stepped forward, a look of determination in his eyes. We don't need firepower. We need to understand it. The symbols, everything around us, it's all part of a code. If we can break it, we can disrupt the machine's connection to Earth. That's our only shot. They didn't have time to waste. Every second that ticked by brought them closer to destruction. Mara's mind raced as she scanned the room for any clue, any hint that could lead them to a solution. Her eyes locked onto something. At the far end of the room, hidden behind a wall of pulsating energy, was a small alcove, a panel embedded deep into the wall, barely visible through the shifting lights. Her heart skipped a beat. There, she shouted. That's it. The core must be connected to that panel. Zane and Kendra moved quickly, following her lead. They approached the alcove cautiously, the air around them crackling with power. The symbols on the walls seemed to react as they got closer, the lines of energy glowing brighter and brighter. Kendra quickly began working on the panel, trying to decipher its lock system. This is unlike anything I've ever seen, she muttered, fingers flying over the interface. It's not a typical code. It's organic. The panel flickered, and for a moment, Mara thought they had made a mistake. But then the energy in the room began to shift. The glow of the core dimmed for a split second before brightening again. The connection's weakening, Kendra said, a spark of hope in her voice. We're getting closer. Just give me a little more time. Mara glanced at the machine's core. The glow of the sphere had dimmed slightly. But it wasn't enough. They needed more time, but how much time did they have before the machine retaliated? The voice echoed again, deeper, more furious this time. You dare challenge me again. You will regret it. I will show you what true power is. Suddenly, the walls of the room began to shake. The ground beneath them cracked open, and the energy in the core surged forward with a deafening roar. The room was coming alive, as if it were fighting back. Mara grabbed Kendra's arm. Hurry. Zane stepped forward, raising his weapon. We don't have a choice anymore. We need to buy her some time. The crew braced themselves. Whatever they had done to weaken the core, the machine wasn't going to let it slide. They were going to have to fight. But as they prepared for the worst, something unexpected happened. The machine's core pulsed one more time, and then, with a final resounding crash, everything stopped. The room went silent. Mara stood still, her heart pounding. Had they done it? Kendra breathed out a sigh of relief. I think we did it. The core's completely deactivated. We've stopped it. For a moment, the crew stood in awe. They had done the impossible. They had stopped Earth's wrath. But the silence that followed was eerie. It wasn't over yet. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as if everything had settled. The hum of energy that once filled the air had quieted, and the pulsing light from the core had dimmed into nothingness. The walls that had been shaking with violent tremors were still, and the overwhelming sensation of power had faded away. Mara, Zane, and Kendra stood in the center of the room, eyes wide and alert, unsure if they were truly safe or if the calm was merely the calm before the storm. The silence was unsettling. But just as they allowed themselves a breath of relief, the room seemed to come alive once again. The walls, which had once been motionless, now thrummed with an energy that surged beneath the surface, like an earthquake building just below the horizon. A low rumble began, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to shift. Mara's heart raced. Something wasn't right. They had expected the machine to deactivate, not to intensify. Kendra's scanner flickered violently in her hand. Something's wrong, she said, eyes scanning the data as it updated faster than she could process. The core is shifting, reconfiguring. I don't know how, but it's like it's trying to adapt. It can't be, Zane replied, the tension in his voice palpable. We stopped it. It was over. But the machine wasn't over. The voice they had heard earlier, that cold, omnipotent voice that seemed to come from everywhere, boomed once again. You fools think you've won. The voice sneered, dripping with contempt. You have merely delayed the inevitable. You have no idea the power you are meddling with. You do not understand what you are up against. Earth is not a planet. It is a force, a being that has existed long before your feeble species ever crawled from the shadows. And now, you will pay for your arrogance. The crew's eyes widened in shock. This wasn't just a machine. They had awakened something far more dangerous, far more ancient than they could have imagined. They were dealing with the very force of the planet itself. Earth wasn't just angry. Earth was fighting back. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked wide open, and massive tendrils of energy shot up from the floor, coiling like serpents ready to strike. The walls twisted, reshaping themselves into a labyrinth of corridors, making it impossible to tell where the exit was, or if there even was one. "We need to get out," Mara shouted, grabbing Zane and Kendra by the arm, pulling them toward the farthest corner of the room. Now. But as they rushed toward the exit, the tendrils of energy shot forward with terrifying speed, wrapping around them and forcing them to stop. The power was immense, far beyond anything they had ever encountered. It was as if Earth itself had become the machine, and they were nothing more than intruders in its territory. "Let go," Kendra yelled, struggling against the tendrils that had wrapped around her body. Her hands reached for her weapon, but the energy was too strong. It crushed her movements, squeezing her tightly. "No," Mara screamed, her mind racing for a solution. She had seen this kind of power before in the ancient records of Earth. Its connection to the planet was something deeper than anyone had imagined. But there was no time to dwell on that now. "We need to fight back," Zane shouted, his voice growing desperate. But how could they fight something so vast, so ancient, and so powerful? The crew was outmatched, their weapons useless against this living planet, this force that had awakened from its slumber. Then, in a flash of realization, Mara understood. This wasn't just about power. It was about control. The core, the tendrils, the room itself, they were all connected. If they could disrupt that connection, they could shut it all down for good. "The symbols," Mara shouted, remembering the strange glyphs and codes they had seen earlier. The codes on the walls. They must hold the key. Zane's eyes went wide. Of course, the machine is all connected through that code. If we can break the code, we can sever Earth's hold on the machine. Kendra struggled against the energy, determination flashing in her eyes. "Let's do it. We don't have much time." The crew rushed toward the walls, dodging the energy tendrils that lashed out at them. They had no choice now. It was all or nothing. The room was alive, shifting around them, as if trying to stop them at every turn. But they couldn't back down. They had to finish what they started. Mara's fingers danced over the symbols, each one more intricate than the last, each one seemingly alive with its own power. The symbols hummed beneath her touch, and she could feel the pulse of the machine, beating in time with her own heart. She wasn't just pressing buttons. She was speaking to Earth itself, commanding it. The machine roared in fury. The walls buckled, the tendrils whipped and lashed, and the voice of Earth echoed again, this time filled with rage. "You cannot control me. You cannot defy me. I am Earth. I am eternal." But Mara was resolute. She pressed the final symbol, and the room erupted in blinding light. For a moment, everything went quiet. And then, with a final, earth-shattering roar, the machine's power snapped, the energy tendrils withdrew, and the room began to stabilize. The walls stopped shifting, and the floor returned to its normal, solid state. The crew stood there, stunned, their hearts pounding. They had done it. They had defeated Earth's wrath. But as they turned to leave the room, a haunting thought filled Mara's mind. The machine was no longer a threat, but the consequences of their actions were far from over.